Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. It is exactly 9:29 a.m. South African time. We're crossing over to Jerusalem and we'll be talking with Samuel Munayer. And this is another very concerning situation arising out of course, Palestine. We understand that the Israeli government has instituted a policy prohibiting Christian Palestinian teachers who live in the West Bank from working in any of the 15 Christian schools in Jerusalem. This in a move that threatens to weaken the 2 millennia presence of Christians in the holy city. Samuel Munayer, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having this topic being discussed. I think it's very, very important and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you indeed. Why do you believe there seems to be this perception globally that the Palestinian issue is only a Muslim issue, whereas you and I and scores of other people are aware of the fact that Palestine is inhabited by Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people alike?
So it really begins with this perception of a Judeo-Christian tradition that is fighting against the Oriental or the people of the East, which are characterized as Muslims only. And therefore, they're painting the situation in Palestine and many other countries as well throughout Western Asia as a battle of the Western civilization against the savage Eastern civilizations. And in that kind of battle, Christianity has become something that has been co-opted as a Western religion rather than a faith, a religion that originated in Palestine. And through this narrative and depiction, as we can see this today with many, many different escalations, many different conflicts and colonial contexts, we see the weaponization of religion. And in that case, Palestinian Christians and Christians throughout Western Asia, whether they be in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, are completely erased in terms of our identity, and our faith is being co-opted for colonial objectives or colonial agendas. And therefore, many Palestinian Christians in Jerusalem, but throughout Palestine, say that within the Palestinian context, not only are we suffering a Nakba, a continuous Nakba, a continuous catastrophe under the Zionists, but we're undergoing through a faith Nakba, a Nakba that has been completely erasing our spirituality, faith, and therefore our indigeneity.
Sadly, Christians in the Western world too seem to have forgotten that there's a very large Christian community in Palestine. We also know that with the genocide in Palestine, again, very, very sadly indeed, not only were mosques erased to the ground, centuries-old churches too were bombed to smithereens. And despite that happening, and despite that being a war crime, I mean, even in the First and Second World Wars, places of, religious homes like churches, mosques, temples, etc., they were places of safety. It was a safety haven, and they were never, ever attacked. And now in the 21st century, the Zionists have obliterated that many mosques and churches in Palestine, and undoubtedly it's happened in other Middle Eastern countries as well, like Lebanon and Syria, etc. Your thoughts?
I think what we're undergoing right now throughout the Mashraq, throughout kind of the Levant, is an erasure of historical sites, but also of traditions. And I can speak specifically on Palestinian Christian traditions and sites that the landscape is changing completely. When we're looking at the genocide in Gaza, we're speaking about one of the most important geographical places in Christianity, where the foundations of Christian monasticism originated. So we are seeing a complete erosion of the landscape and tradition. And you mentioned about the schools and about the development of the new policies regarding Christian schools. And one needs to understand that the institutions in Jerusalem, the Christian institutions such as hospitals and schools, are really the backbone of the community. Not only do they serve employment, but they are cultural centers that sustain the identity of Palestinian Christians and others. So when we're speaking about an attack on these kind of institutions, bombing of churches, and displacement of Christian communities, we're speaking not only about the annihilation of people's bodies, which is the most important aspect of the most horrific aspect of the colonization of the Zionists, but we're speaking also about the erosion of identity and therefore tradition. And I will extend it, it's not only about Christians, it's also about other faiths, because Palestine and other countries in the Levant hold traditions that are interreligious, hold practices that transcend sectarian boundaries. And therefore this should not only be perceived as an attack on Christians, but it should be an attack on all Palestinians. As us Palestinian Christians, when we see Al-Aqsa being raided, or when we see the Al-Aqsa Mosque being vandalized or denied access for worshippers, we see that as an attack within our own Christian faith as well. So this is what we're experiencing in the last few decades are extremely worrying, and sadly, I think we're heading into a path where the erosion and cultural identity of a people group is being slowly erased.
And from my understanding, Christians and Muslims have lived side by side in peace and harmony for hundreds of years in that part of the world. And now with this genocide, all of that is totally being erased from the land. And it seems as if the Zionists are intent of erasing Christians and Muslims from the memory of the people in that part of the world. Now, coming back to the issue around the school closures, school principals in Jerusalem recently received letters from the Israeli Ministry of Education stipulating that beginning in September of this year, they required to only hire teachers who reside in the city and hold Israeli issued qualifications, which means that it rules out teachers from other parts of Palestine. It also means that they're going to lose their livelihoods, their jobs, and they won't be able to support their families.
Precisely, but it's much more than that. Of course, there's the material attack on teachers that come from different places in Palestine other than Jerusalem, who have access to Jerusalem only because of their work permit, which in this case is within schools. But it's about having teachers who have been trained under the Israeli curriculum and not having teachers that have been trained or have been qualified under the Palestinian curriculum. So yes, there's a material assault on Palestinian teachers, but really it is the fundamental aspect of the barring of Palestinian teachers from the Christian schools in Jerusalem is an attack under the Palestinian curricula and therefore Palestinian identity and history. And you mentioned about the tradition and history of coexistence between Christians and Muslims, which is central within the Palestinian curriculum. And therefore, when you are banning teachers who are qualified under the Palestinian curriculum but are qualified under the Israeli curriculum to teach in these schools, you're essentially erasing this tradition and history that is being educated in the schools, and therefore attacking the identity of Palestinians. And we are seeing that, yes, this is a new policy in 2026, but actually since 1948, the colonialists always had a specific target within Palestinian educational systems, and specifically the curriculum.
Now, the GSCS representative who spoke on conditions of anonymity explained, and I quote, "There are not enough Christian teachers in Jerusalem to take over. In the long term, these restrictions risk permanently affecting the Christian character of our institutions and weakening, very important, weakening the Christian faith and presence in the city."
Precisely, and as I mentioned, these kind of public institutions like schools and hospitals for the Christian churches are the backbone of not only the Christian presence in Jerusalem, but they are cultural and community centers for Palestinian Christians, and therefore a attack on the Christian schools really assaults and degrades the importance that these institutions have for the community in Jerusalem, but all throughout Palestine. And therefore, when we are looking at these kind of statements and the alarm bells that are being issued, we should be taking them seriously. And it's no coincidence that these policies are being hastened or being enacted whilst most of the global attention is on Iran and Lebanon. And I think there's an opportunity for the Israelis right now to push down policies that will further Judaize the city of Jerusalem and assault its Palestinian character, its indigenous character.
In wrapping up then, I'm wondering what sort of global intervention needs to be put in place for this to be stopped, for the harassment of Christian teachers, to allow them access to continue teaching and to preserve the faith, obviously. Do you believe that perhaps Rome, the Vatican, and other such powerful institutions could and should be intervening in this matter?
100%. And I think as a Palestinian Christian that's living in Jerusalem, I've been upset with the responses of the churches or the lack of responses of the churches beyond the diplomatic gestures that they are extremely concerned, but actually creating an action plan that will save the community here in Jerusalem, that as the community that's been here since the beginning of the early church. And frankly, I've been disappointed with the reaction of the churches who have been unable and disabled to respond and understand the problem concretely. And I think part of that is that most of the leadership of the Christian churches in Palestine, but also beyond, are not from the global south, are not Palestinian in the case of Palestine, and therefore are inadequate to respond and to understand the issue. I think if the church really wants to be salt and light, as Christ commanded us to be, then we must understand the problem in order to provide a suitable remedy. And right now, I think the churches are misdiagnosing the sickness that we're having here in Palestine, and therefore are offering us inadequate remedies to treat the illness.
Our thoughts and prayers are with you and the Christian community in Palestine, not forgetting our Muslim brothers and sisters in that part of the world that has undergone such extreme atrocities and hardship. To one and all of you, all I can say is, please, God, protect one and all. Samuel Munayer, Palestinian theologian from Jerusalem, we truly offer our praise and best wishes to you. Go well. God bless.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate having discussions on this precisely in this moment of time where these discussions seem lost. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. 9:43 News and Views on Salam Media. We are gearing up for our final interview of the morning. And that, of course, will be with Cassius Selala, Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities.